Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. This is Allison Cook-Mincer. I'm Editor-in-Chief of Plan Sponsor and Plan Advisor, and I'm pleased to be your host and moderator for today's webcast titled Actionable Insights for Your Mobile Workforce, Portability Solutions Key to Improving Retirement Outcomes. We've got a great presentation for you today, and I'm really excited about it. And I, of course, want to thank Retirement Clearinghouse for making today's presentation possible for all of you. Before we get started and I introduce today's speakers, I'd like to take a moment, if I can, and just go through a couple of housekeeping items. First, we will be taking Q&A at the end of the session, and so if you'd like to ask us a question, please feel free to do so using that little box you see on the lower right-hand side of your screen titled Q&A. You can write your questions in at any time, and we'll just queue them up for the end, so please take advantage of that if you have any questions for us. And secondly, I know a quite common question is whether or not you'll be receiving a copy of today's presentation. So I want to advise everyone to yes, you will be receiving a copy of today's slides in PDF form, as well as a link to a replay of today's event in case you'd like to revisit or re-listen to anything that we discuss here today. So be on the lookout for an email from Plan Sponsor with that information. And now, with housekeeping out of the way, let me introduce today's speakers, Warren Cormier and Spencer Williams. First, Warren is the founder and president of Boston Research Technologies. He co-founded the Behavioral Finance Forum with Dr. Shlomo Bernatzi of UCLA and is recognized as the market research leader in the defined contribution industry, voted by DC professionals onto the top 50 most influential people in the industry. He's also the author of the DCP Plan Sponsor Satisfaction and Market Dynamic Studies, which is the standard for service quality and trend measurement in the 401k arena. And last but not least, he's the author of Eliminating Friction and Leaks in America's Defined Contribution System, drawing attention to the systematic issues caused by lack of retirement savings portability. Welcome, Warren. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And joining Warren on our call today is Spencer Williams. He's the founder, president, and CEO of Retirement Clearinghouse. He's an innovator, entrepreneur, and leading industry advocate for plan-to-plan portability solutions, particularly for small job changers. Spencer's influential amongst public policymakers and industry centers of influence, promoting systematic solutions that stem retirement savings leakage and promote retirement savings consolidation. He has more than 30 years of experience in the financial services industry, including numerous senior executive roles with leading financial institutions. Welcome, Spencer.
Thank you, Allison.
And with that, let's start talking about our presentation today. Our panelists are going to be speaking about a research study which was the first of its kind research to look beyond the statistics to understand participant behavior and psychology associated with the retirement plan distribution decision, something plan sponsors are ultimately familiar with, or intimately rather familiar with. Boston Research Technologies conducted the study in collaboration with Retirement Clearinghouse. More than 5,000 participants in a retirement plan were surveyed, and the survey was conducted just last month in April. And we're going to talk through some of the interesting kind of results of the survey. We're going to talk through what the results of the survey can mean for plan sponsors. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, Spencer, do you want to maybe talk through a little bit about an overall look at what you guys were looking into and the purpose of the study?
Yes, thanks, Allison. And before I turn it over to Warren, who will really present the meat of the findings today, just give a little bit of background to all of the folks who are taking time out of their busy days and give you an idea for why we did the survey. You can read on the screen some of the key conclusions. Why we did the survey was because we found a hole in our understanding and in the research around portability issues. Many of us on this call are familiar with retirement plan leakage, and there's lots of statistics available on that. You know, the highlight of those is you look at the very smallest accounts out there, particularly those with less than $5,000, and we see a lot of people, about 3.5 million people with that account balance or lower, changing jobs each year, and more than half of them are cashing out. What we wanted to find out was why. Why are they cashing out? We went further once we started to understand the mobile workforce. There's other information available. eBRI is a great source for this that shows that about 10 million participants a year change jobs. You know, fully 2/3 of those folks have less than $20,000 at the time they change jobs, and all sorts of things are happening. Sometimes they're leaving accounts behind in plans, sometimes they're cashing out, sometimes they're making their way to a new plan, sometimes they're rolling to an IRA. Again, the question we tried to answer was why? Our key conclusions from this quite extensive research was that a majority of participants are basing their distribution choice on convenience. What's the easiest thing for me to do? Warren's going to further expose that in a second. The second big conclusion that came back to us was that participants were overwhelmingly receptive to using their qualified plan. In particular, when you look at younger ages, they looked at their plan as their primary retirement account during their working years. That preference tended to change later in their lives. Participants further rated roll-in programs, i.e. their sponsor, their plan is helping them consolidate in their current employer plan as an excellent and valuable benefit. And last, to fill the big gap that's out there in the market today, there was a need identified for portability solutions to be implemented at the plan level. Need because, as I said, the results are scattered and all over the board. And if we want to meet this need that participants have for using their plan, we're going to have to help them do it, just like we help them with other automatic type solutions. So with those key conclusions, I look forward to seeing questions pop up on the screen, and I even look forward more to Warren Cormier presenting the key findings.
Thank you, Spencer. And if we can go to the, here we go. So let's, I'm going to go through some of the key findings, as Spencer said. There's an enormous amount of data in the study, but we tried to pull out the things that we thought would be most interesting for this purposes of this webinar. And the first thing I want to do is talk about kind of what distribution decisions different generations are making, and we see that there's a generation effect. And what you see here is how many times people in the millennial age cohort, the Gen Xers and the baby boomers, made each type of decision: rolled to an IRA, cashed out, and rolled. Now this is, by the way, for every single time they've had a plan. And what we see from the data is there is an awful lot of plans out there. People have participated, you know, the title is the mobile workforce. We see that people have participated in so many different plans, and they've had opportunities to change jobs and to see and to do different things. We can see, for example, with millennials, 33% rolled to an IRA, 34% have cashed out, and you can see the different activities for each of the generations. As we go to cash outs, what we're going to do is in this presentation is I'm going to talk about cash outs, and then we're going to talk about over here rolled into the new plan and leaved in the prior plan as kind of groups. So the first step is going to be looking at cash outs. So cash outs are putting retirement risk across retirement at risk and for oops, this is let me back up here. Putting retirement risk across all age groups. It's not the no one age cohort has a monopoly on being people that cash out. In terms of cashed out at least once over their working lifetime, we see that this is somewhat more prevalent among millennials and Gen Xers than baby boomers, with a third of the millennials and the Gen Xers have cashed out at least once in their lifetime, and baby boomers about 1 out of 4. And we also see in the bottom row that in some cases a small percent is actually cashed out more than one account. So it's not that actually that rare an event. In terms of the balances that they're cashing out, we saw that the older participants are cashing out larger balances across the top. You can see the amount taken cashed out of the previous plan. This is looking at their most recent plan that they cashed out of. We can see that if a baby boomers, they're much more concentrated. 75% are above 5,000, whereas for the millennials, it's about 53%, 55%, and for Gen Xers, it's about 59%. But as you grow older, now, of course, there are more balances accumulated by that time, but we do see that the older participants are cashing out larger balances. And now, one of the things we wanted to look at was, so what are you doing with the money? And one of the things we found is, first of all, there are generational differences, and that for people that told us what they did with the money, making debt payments was the most popular reason that we heard. It's about 36% of those who gave a reason said that debt payments was the use of the funds. We also saw in the second row emergency, people describing that I needed the money for emergency purposes. Now, again, in most cases they were not voluntarily quitting their job or changing jobs, so there would be some emergencies here. But we saw overall about half the respondents said that the cash out was an emergency. For the other half, they said that it wasn't. So we see some transportation requirements down here and special events for the family. But generally, what we saw was that that many participants were using the cash out, the money in their plan, is kind of a private unemployment insurance program. That is, that they were going to use the money to pay bills between jobs. They were going to use money to pay expenses to find a new job and things like that. So there were expenses that were related directly to the fact that I'm not working right now. In terms of what drives a cash out regarding, yes?
Sorry, we have a question just about the study itself, and so I want to ask it while it's relevant. Did any of this, when you talked about cash outs, did you include loans that were defaulted as a cash out?
No, this was strictly people that said we took the money out of the account. We actually specified and put it into a personal checking account or other type of money market account or that type of thing. So no, it didn't include defaulted loans.
Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
Allison, let me jump in real quick just to put some context around that. There's some great EBRI data out there that shows that of all of the dollars that are reported as leakage, roughly 89% of them are what we're terming cash outs in this study. So, 89 out of every $100, and each of loan defaults and hardship withdrawals, they kind of split 50-50 between the remaining 11%. So we focused the study on the big fat part of the leakage problem.
Okay, I appreciate it, and I said, sorry to interrupt. I just saw the question come in and wanted to ask it while it was relevant. Thank you guys.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Allison. So back to the kind of what drives cash outs. We looked at it come from several different ways. Two ways were income level and accumulated wealth level. And we saw that actually when it came to income levels that we saw no consistent trend upward or downward as you move from making less than 50 to making over 150K. So it was not really driven by the income level. But we did see much more correlation on the top row on this page in terms of the cash outs being driven by by wealth levels. That is, the higher the wealth level, the lower the incidence of a cash out, and that would tie back to some people feeling that it was an emergency that they needed to cash out to make ends meet between jobs. There was another level of analysis we did with the data where we went and we created a financial wellness index for each person, and we found that actually financial wellness of the household was a far more powerful driver than even wealth. And financial wellness, as you know, is not necessarily the only for people that have high levels of income. That people that with high levels of income are also likely to overspend as low income levels. So, but we did see that wealth did play a role in predicting whether or not a cash out would happen, but financial wellness was actually the most powerful predictor. The other thing we've seen, and we've seen this in several studies that we've done, is that there is a great deal of regret over taking a cash out. We find that people matter of fact, as they grow older, the level of regret they have about having taken a previous cash out grows, as you can see, 36 to 46 to 53, as you move from millennials to the baby boomers cohorts. But we do see that, and this is actually something that is important to tell participants, is that if you're going to cash out, by the way, a lot of people that have done it in the past have regretted that decision, but clearly here that a significant proportion of people that cash out eventually regret having made that decision. In terms of the back to the generational differences and the type of decision they made, I want to focus now on rolling into a new plan and leaving it in a prior plan. So we've covered the cash outs, and now we're going to move into people that made these decisions over here. Okay, so the question is why a separated participant leaves balances behind, and we see a bunch of reasons down here. I preferred the investments in my previous plan, so I left it behind. That's about 27% of the entire population. You see some slight differences there by age cohorts. Better service at the old plan, 22%. But we also picked up some indications here that we'll talk about process in a bit, but we also picked up some indications that the process to move it to the next plan may be getting in the way. What I've referred to before as friction. Not a priority to move it, not sure how to move it. The balance was too small to bother to go through the process. I didn't have enough time to move it, and it seemed hard to move out. So we're picking up on those factors that could possibly have been related to the process involved, that the process of moving from from a previous plan to the new one. As you can see here, again, not a priority, not sure how to do it, balance too small, etc. So we can see that we're seeing indications of friction. What do they intend to do with the money in the previous plan? We saw some fairly even distributions here, 27% of millennials, but 31% for Gen Xers and 42% for boomers said, I'm just going to leave it right where it is. And then we saw roll it over to the new employer plan that actually was a higher incidence of people expecting to do that for millennials than for boomers. And then rolling to an IRA about equal across the three groups, and it was about 22%. Cashing out, again, we saw that we see again here that the likelihood of cashing out was higher, quite higher among millennials than they were among Gen Xers and the baby boomers. And you can see there's a certain percent that say, I really have no idea what I'm going to be doing next with the money that's still in the plan. And I just highlighted those differences there. So when we talk to them about whether or not they would be willing to use an employer-provided participant paid, this is important, that it's participant paid roll-in service, we saw that actually there was a very high willingness for using that type of service and actually willing to pay for it. And what you see here is the percentage that said that they would be willing to pay across, actually we tested a large variety of price points. Each person only heard one price point as the proper way to do price testing, but we did see that 3 out of 4 millennials would be willing to use this type of service, even if they were paying for it themselves. A little bit lower on the Gen Xers and about half for the baby boomers, but even at half, that's quite a high percentage of participants that would be willing to do it. Now, part of that is driven by the process, and this is the existing process. So we talked to people that rolled in the into their current account and the current DC account, and we asked them some questions about their experience in doing it. So the first question was, so how long did that process take you from beginning to end? Not continuous work, obviously, but over what time period did it happen? And we saw that well, you can see here on the screen, 15% said a week or less, but we also had 27% saying that it was more than, it took me more than 2 months from beginning to end, and that on that more than 2 months, sometimes it would take 6 to 8 months. Some people never actually were able to complete the process. We also found, interestingly enough, that of the people that did it, almost 2/3, 62%, you can see in the lower left-hand corner, asked somebody or had somebody help them with it, to help them with the roll-in. So that was pretty interesting, is that even of those people who did it, they required assistance, and we asked, so who were those kinds of people? In some cases, it was my accountant. In some cases, financial planner. It could have been an attorney. We also heard in some cases that the existing new employer help them roll in the money to their new to the new plan. In terms of the time required or perceived time required, once we showed participants who hadn't done it before, showed them the steps involved, we asked them to simply tell us, and it's not that precise, but just what amount of time do you think that would be, it would take you to go through the steps involved in rolling into your to your new plan? And we found that this is continuous work, not a time period of spending, half an hour one day, et cetera, but a continuous work. We saw that 18% said this would take me 5 hours of work. 20% said more than 19 hours of work, and we had a median value of 9 hours, and an average number of hours is 18 hours to get this thing done. That's just perception based upon just looking at the process that we showed them. We also asked them, so just generally take those hours that you think it would take you to move the plan, the old plan into the new plan, and just the hours, how much do you value those hours, and what kind of monetary value would you place on those hours that you're going to have to spend to do this? And you can see on the right-hand side, 14% said less than $50, but you had 21% saying that I would be using labor, my own time, I would value between $50 and $100 for those hours. Total time, for 500 to 1,000. 15% said, I would value my time there too. So when you look at willingness to pay $79 or $39 or $200, you can see why we got such high levels of willingness to pay, because it was perceived as being a better option than spending your own time. Compared to the employee benefits received from the employer today, would you say this is an excellent benefit, a good benefit, or a meaningless benefit? If your employer decided to add this to their list of benefits, and we see here that 46%, almost half, said this would be an excellent benefit compared to what I get today. Another half almost said it would be a good benefit. So this is something that for plan sponsors, it's actually an interesting addition to the benefit package, and we saw that 25% of those who rolled in already indicated that they did receive help from their employer. So some employers are doing that already. And then we asked the question is if you didn't have to pay anything and your current plan paid for it, how likely would you be to use a portability service? And remembering when we exposed them to a price, I think the high water mark for millennials was 66%, and it went down from there. But here we see if it's free, that is, it's paid for by the plan, they didn't have to write a check or they didn't have to have the money taken out of their own account. That willingness goes up to above or approximately 8 out of 10 for all three age cohorts. So there was quite a high level of receptivity there. And then we also asked them, what about your IRA accounts? Do you have IRAs? And the people that said yes, we asked them, would you be willing to use a service like this to move the IRAs into the plan at your current employer? And we also saw that all three age cohorts were highly willing to use their existing plan as kind of a primary retirement account. I'm willing to consolidate my retirement, qualified money into the current plan, and IRAs would certainly be included in that. And they indicated here that for millennials and Gen Xers, 9 out of 10 would say, sure, I would be willing to do that, and 2 out of 3 baby boomers. So those are the key findings, and I'm going to turn it back to Spencer now for him to talk about some of the key findings and implications, and then we'll do Q&A. So Spencer, you're back on.
Great, thanks, Warren. This is a great time for all of you who are on the call to post up any questions that you want answered on the call. I know we've kind of dumped a lot of data on you in the last 25 minutes or so. This actually represents a small fraction of all of the findings from the survey, and over the coming weeks and months, we'll be disseminating that further. But if you have any questions, start posting them up. My job here is to first kind of gather the key findings into the 2 primary buckets that Warren identified. The first one is about cash outs, and get them in one place. So those of you who like cheat sheets, this is the cheat sheet for cash outs. Quickly, younger workers more likely, older workers are cashing out larger amounts. The majority of cash outs, this is perhaps a myth buster, are not used for emergencies. There's certainly plenty of emergency circumstances that were identified, but as Warren said, it became a sort of convenient honeypot for other types of activities that folks use the money for. And by the way, it wasn't in our survey, but the vast majority of folks, even those who cashed out, we didn't report it on this screen, agreed that their qualified plan was supposed to be used solely for retirement. So it's kind of funny watching the behaviors about what they say versus what they do. Second to last, cash out rates were all about wealth, and as Warren added some color, it's about financial wellness as well, not so much your income level. And then lastly, cash out regret increases with age. You sort of wonder if we could get the older folks to teach the younger folks if we could slow this problem down. Now let's take a look at what the implications might be for plan sponsors. We'll forward the slide. It doesn't seem to want to forward. So Ray, maybe you can give me a hand and advance that slide for the implications.
Let me see if I still have. Oh, it looks like it's working now.
We got it. We're good. Just leave it right there, Ray. That's fine. So cash outs are clearly putting retirement at risk across all age groups. We all know the value of $1 saved at age 25 is higher because of compounding than the value of $1 at age 65. Nonetheless, all age groups are susceptible to cashing out. And one of the things that we'd like sponsors to think about a little bit is, your plan's new hires. So, every company has turnover. Some industries, turnover is higher than others, clearly. We could probably identify those without labeling any industries. What you might be surprised at is that literally across the United States for 50-something years, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has reported an average turnover rate of about 12%. So that's across all industries, across the permanent workforce in the United States. This has been going on for a very long time. We'd like to ask plan sponsors to think about their new hires, okay? That's an actionable point in time where you can do something about the cash out problem. And if we can keep them from cashing out as they're coming into your plan, obviously they came from somewhere else, we've done a good thing for their retirement readiness. The action items here. First of all, we have to change participants' reference points. This is kind of an all-hands-on-deck item. It can be, almost anybody, an advisor, call center for your plan provider, at the plan sponsor themselves. Anyone can help on this one, which is change the reference points. We would submit from the research that penalties and taxes don't appear to be a deterrent to cashing out. Second, we found that translating the impact of a cash-out decision into longer-term values, i.e. the $1,000 you cash out today at age 25 is actually $9,000 at age 65 when you'll need it. That type of demonstrated compounding, particularly, well, actually for all ages, is a very valuable tool to use when you're engaging a participant when they're in this action zone, leaving a job, going to a new job, And then finally, we would recommend implementing portability solutions, help the movement of balances. We found that, as Warren a couple of slides ago clearly identified, those people who sought help and got help, were much more successful at preserving their account balances as they changed jobs. And of course, the friction, the convenience, and those types of things. These are actionable items at the plan level to prevent cash outs. So Ray, I'll ask you to go to the next slide. This slide is about grouping our key findings around roll-in. And we would strongly suggest at a very high level that cash outs and roll-ins can be related to each other. That by implementing a roll-in program for your new hires, you can prevent cash outs. But now let's look at roll-ins by themselves, okay? First, the findings. Majority of participants across all ages are leaving stuff behind based on convenience, okay? As we saw in the research earlier, and I see a couple of questions have come up and said, will we get copies of these slides? The answer is yes. Everybody can have copies of this research. I wish I had the slide number at hand, but a majority of stranded accounts will leave your plan. This finding was entirely consistent with other work that we've done with very large employers, that over time, the separated participants who leave their account behind, perhaps 25% of those accounts will stay there on a longer term, but the other 75% they're moving. Our perspective would be that you need to help them move, okay, that's a better outcome than leaving the account at risk of an unintended or a decision made of convenience in the future. When it comes to roll-in, the process is confusing, difficult to decipher, and time-consuming. Some folks have used a banking analogy and said, imagine if it were this hard to get a check cashed or an account moved or money moved through, the U.S. banking system. At present, the process of transferring from plan to plan is a very difficult one and time-consuming. And you saw that in terms of both the folks who were successful at it and the amount of time they spent doing it. And then when we took the entire group of respondents to this survey through a portability concept test and said, tell us how this would work for you, we got, basically, I think the mean was about 9 hours of an individual's time to execute the process. Participants, and here's the real story, are highly receptive to using their plan throughout their working careers. And I think that's why they would rate this as an excellent benefit. And then finally, a little bit of a surprise finding, and this of all of the findings that we had tilted toward the younger generations, a significant majority of the younger workers with an IRA, would consider moving that money into their plan. That preference dropped significantly as our survey respondents got older. So the implications for sponsors, Ray, if I could ask you to forward that, and you can go ahead and put the action items up as well, Ray. Thanks. We all know that portability is sort of legislated or statutorily embedded in our plans, but it's one of those services that really hasn't been implemented broadly across the system. Okay. Our point of view, and this can be demonstrated, is that portability solutions actually improve your plan metrics. So if you're a plan sponsor, just think about the small stranded accounts that are left behind in your plan, and then think about your new hires, and think about what would happen to your plan if all your new hires came with a balance from one or more prior employers. And the same thing was happening with your separated participants. They ended up in another employer plan. I know it's a big vision, but it's one that we'd like to share with you. Your plan is a valuable resource, okay? And I think it's being underutilized in terms of being a point of consolidation for your participants' savings. There's a huge opportunity for you to boost your plan performance and assets through roll-ins, okay? Someone else's separated participant is actually your new hire. So if you address the issue at the point of new hire, we think you have a large opportunity to at least balance out what is currently kind of a one-way flow of assets out of plans as participants change jobs. And we think that those flows could be balanced as plan sponsors adopt roll-in services. Last but not least, we saw in the findings as we did our millennials and Xers and boomers generational views and wealth that, the communications need to be targeted, okay? The younger folks aren't responding the same way as us older folks and vice versa. So age and wealth-based communications. Action items, kind of already talked about them, promote and facilitate roll-in services. It optimizes retirement readiness, and frankly, it utilizes your plan's tools to their fullest extent if a participant has their full retirement account in your plan. Communicate roll-in benefits. We've seen the value of this. It's not a one-and-done type of communication. It's not when the new hire shows up for the enrollment meeting for the first time and putting a slip of paper in the packet. Yeah, we all do that. But it's like most communications, we absorb them over time and through repetitive messaging, and that's the approach that we would suggest in your plan. Repetitive messaging, age and wealth-based, and really hammer the point home, and that will increase the value of your plan. And last but not least, consider paying for it. Some of our largest clients do that today, and their programs are measurably successful based on the fact that these are permissible plan expenses. So I think we're at the point where we can start to take some Q&A. And Allison, you're on deck for that.
Great. Thanks, guys. I have a question. Just in general, I'm kind of curious, and maybe Warren, maybe this is for you. Clearly, this is a comprehensive study. You guys covered a lot of information. But I'd love to know, of everything that you researched, of all the data collected, what would you consider the most surprising finding?
Well, there were a couple things that I thought were particularly interesting and surprising. One is the willingness to consolidate all of their qualified money into one plan. We were expecting some, but it's interesting how much consolidation is valued by participants. Also, the perceived quality of the benefit, that is, compared to everything else that you have today, how valuable would it be to you to have a portability benefit available to you? And that was quite high. The third thing and the final thing was this whole thing about whether or not the penalties are high enough or significant enough. And basically, what we saw was that over 8 in 10 people who actually did cash out said that they were aware that there were penalties involved. Now, whether or not they knew specifically what it was, whatever, is in question. But the issue may be that penalizing them may not be, at least at 10%. They know they have to pay taxes eventually anyway, so no harm in that. But that the penalties of 10% were not stopping the people that eventually cashed out. Now, we don't know how many people who didn't cash out were stopped by the penalties, but I was struck by the by that finding, and that introduces a lot of behavioral economics in terms of explaining why this phenomenon is happening. It has to do with loss aversion and prospect theory and enhanced active choice, but really what it's saying is that we need to convert the cash out decision from you're going to receive a 10% penalty and put it more in terms of the money that you are losing is not $1,000 you would cash out today. The money that you would lose is more like 5 times that by the time you retire. That has changed the reference points on the decision to cash out. So those were the 3 things that kind of struck me the most.
Excellent. Thank you. It's always interesting to hear the researcher's perspective on what they thought about
Right.
the research. You know, Spencer, you went through a bunch of the takeaways and the action items, but I guess if you look at everything that we talked through, what is the biggest takeaway for plan sponsors regarding cash outs? In your opinion, what should plan sponsors be doing, say, tomorrow that they're not doing today?
Yeah, I look at it holistically, Allison. It's a great question. I think the answer is that start looking at your plan in its fullest potential, okay, as the place of consolidation for all of your employees. There were some statistics, I'm not sure whether it was this survey or another, but that about 1 out of every 2 participants has another retirement account somewhere. By the way, that's part of your entire population of participants. Now, what we think should be happening today is, trying to address your entire population of participants. That's a big task to take on right away. But if you think about the new hires, that's an actionable point that can be addressed today. And by getting the new hires or educating the new hires, making them aware of the value of the plan right up front, and proactively promoting, the idea that they should move their money into the plan. Whether the plan pays or the participant pays, yeah, you'll have a higher success rate if it's a plan expense, but we saw a very high response rate to participants who are willing to pay for it just to have the work done for them, and they see the benefits of the plan. Okay, so here's what happens if we attack the problem. I'll just go to theoretical world. If every plan sponsor tomorrow morning had a program for their new hires to help them roll into the plan, we would dramatically reduce the amount of cash outs that are going on out there. We clearly identified cash outs are happening because they're the easiest thing to do. They are also clearly not the smartest thing to do. The smartest thing to do is to retain your savings, whether you do that in an IRA or in a plan. And if you're in your working career, our point would be use the plan as the consolidation point. There may be other needs later in life for an IRA. Or at any point in time, there could be other needs. But if all plans did that tomorrow morning, we would dramatically reduce the cash outs, increase the efficiency of the plan itself, and the really big win is retirement readiness, starts to tick up, from where it is today to ever higher levels.
Thanks. Really, definitely food for thought, something to think about, take back, and consider. So we do have a lot of questions also coming in, and I'm going to start going through what we've got here. You know, Warren, is there any information or was there any data regarding the pain points about rolling money into the new plan? You know, what's the deterrent to completing a roll-in?
Clearly, the process is getting in the way. There's just no question about that, and that is the biggest step problem with rolling in. There's also we saw that a lot of people were not aware that they could even do that. And they didn't say that they weren't. They said, I don't even know. And so I think that two recommendations from that. One is obviously education, letting people know when they leave or when they join you as a plan sponsor, let them know that that's possible to do. But also this, you know, I don't expect that the process itself will be changed quickly, or nothing moves that fast in Washington. So I don't think that's going to happen. But masking to the participant the difficulty of moving to the roll-in, that essentially it would be masking the pain point and saying as the employer we can make that happen for you is the recommendation coming out of that. But those are clearly the pain points.
Makes a lot of sense. And you know, when you talk about takeaways and what the plan sponsor should do, when you talk about plan sponsors encouraging the roll-ins, what about with exiting employees? You know, is there any thought that the plan sponsor should also do the reverse and encourage the employees who are leaving to roll it out of the plan? You know, the question is that way that people would get the message both leaving the former employer and coming, or going to the new employer.
Yeah, it's also it works on both ends, and question you might say, well, why would an employer do that for someone who's leaving them? Well, I mean, obviously, lots of employers provide benefits to people that leave their company, but this is remember the existing employees are watching as to how people are treated as they leave, and showing that level of care and concern about people as they're leaving the company is always a good thing. But certainly, get people, on both ends of the transaction, the leaving the job and starting the new job, it makes sense to be communicating.
So, Allison, let me go there. There's, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are, read about the, quote, sharing economy that's out there today, the Ubers of the world and the Airbnbs. One of the points that we would like to emphasize is that there's a little bit of a community required to make this work. So this question is actually a great question, which is, if I'm an employer, should I educate people who are leaving here what they should do with their money, with a primary emphasis on, hey, if you're going to another employer-sponsored plan, well, be sure to check it out to make sure the plan is good and all that kind of stuff. But yes, that's the type of thing that you should be doing. The community aspect of it, or the sharing economy aspect of it, is that these folks who are these participants who are in the status of changing jobs are kind of in no man's land today. And sort of no one owns the ones leaving, and there hasn't been a lot of ownership for the ones coming in, and the results are evident to us now. We have lots and lots of duplicate accounts in the system. We have lots and lots of very small balance accounts in the system. We have lots and lots of people cashing out because of convenience issues, because it seems to be too hard. But if plans thought of themselves as connected to the next plan, whether it was their new hires, which makes the most sense to us, right? That's a new employee. You want to welcome them. You want to throw out the welcome mat and say, hey, listen, we got a great series of benefits for you. Here's when you really got to consider. But just as equally on the backside, if employers picked up on that, they're going to be solving problems that are existing in their plan today, which are small accounts that get left behind. And, oh, by the way, most of us change residences. And pretty much the last thing we do after we're done changing residence is notify all our old employers of our new address so that they can send us all the materials on that old plan that we left behind 15 years ago. So just think about that problem being solved by the community or the shared economy in retirement, helping people move from plan to plan.
Excellent. Definitely, you know, it's a little bit of that, what is the analogy when you're raising a kid? It takes a village. It's a little bit here too, you know, it kind of takes everybody, right, to kind of come together and really help participants help themselves and really not hurt themselves. It's obviously a little bit of a different analogy, but you know.
Well, there's a macro stat out there, so it's really, I don't want to go too macro here, but EBRI calculated that if we, you know, the community, the village, got together and cut the cash outs in half, that we would add $1.3 trillion in savings over the next 10 years. You can reduce that down to a number, you know, and it comes out to about $19,000 or $20,000 per participant who's in the system today. I would suggest that with average account balances where they are today, that $19,000 or $20,000 added to each of those accounts is a significant number. And it increases the value of the benefit. It increases individuals' retirement readiness. There's just all sorts of good that comes from that.
You know, this is an interesting question, and I wonder what either one of you thinks of this. When we talk about people cashing out and trying to help them understand what that longer-term value could be, and, you know, I think, Warren, some of the data that you were showing about how people's regret grows as they get older, right, because the millennials who just did the cash out, the present value of money is still important to them, that they just still see that present value of money. But when you saw the baby boomers, they really considered it a regret to cash out. And so the question is, you know, should plan sponsors be talking to their administrators about putting, you know, that longer term value on distribution papers, or basically communicating that longer term value ahead of the distribution? That's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, no, I would think that would be a great recommendation to make. Like we said, we need to change the reference point. In the survey itself, we had a little calculator in the questionnaire where somebody told us their age early on in the survey. They told us how much they cashed out most recently, and we calculated for them the value of that money at age 65. We just picked that, you know, as the average retirement age, and what we found is that a third of people who cashed out said, had I known that information, I would have rethought this decision to cash out. That it was, you know, if I was using it to buy groceries, that's actually a pretty expensive loaf of bread. That I was, you know, I was kind of twittering the money away on different things. No, we actually saw that. We tested that in the survey and found that it has quite a dramatic effect. I mean, there's no one step alone that will take care of all cash outs, but when you're chipping away with things like that at 30% or 33% that would change their mind, that's a pretty impressive step.
Absolutely. I know we're coming up on time, but there is a question here. It's a clarification question. When you were talking about consider allowing this is a permissible plan expense, do you mean that to be a participant expense attributable to the participant's account or a plan level expense?
Yeah, we've seen it both ways, Allison. Okay. But when we say permissible plan expense, it's we're thinking of a plan level expense. So like any group benefit, you know, certain people may be benefiting from an action this year and other people next year, and people, you know, a different group the year after that. Over time, particularly with the turnover rate, particularly in higher turnover industries, everybody gets a shot at the benefit. And so permissible plan expense is we're paying it, you know, at the plan level, not the individual level. And we just see about a 20%, maybe 25% bump in take-up rate when that is done versus an individual, you know, deducting it from their account.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. That looks like all the time we have. I hate to cut it short, but we are right up on time, and I want to be mindful of people hopping off to get to their next meeting. I want to thank all of our attendees, of course, today. I hope you guys found this of interest, and I want to remind you, we continue to get this question. You will be getting a follow-up email, both with a link to a recording of today's event as well as a copy of today's presentation. Of course, thank our speakers today, and thank Retirement Clearinghouse for bringing the presentation to all of us. So thank you, Warren. Thank you, Spencer. Appreciate your time and
you
thoughts.
bet, Allison.
Thanks, everyone, for your attention and time, and appreciate having you on the call. We look forward to seeing you on a future event.
Thank you.